What was the most unique car of the 90s? A Nissan 300ZX, a Miata, a Supra, an NSX? All of these are cool, but there's something better, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you. There's a car out there that goes against the grain in all the right ways, baby. One car that satisfies the needs of any 90s Japanese vehicle owner. One car offers exquisite luxury to an extent now reserved for six-figure crossovers. Ugh. Not to mention the factory touchscreen car control system with the first ever vehicle GPS built in. All this while putting out more horsepower than a Porsche 911, Acura NSX, and a Toyota Supra at the same time. Some say such a vehicle is merely a car of dreams. However, I say they just don't know about the Eunos Cosmo. The first Cosmo was named the L10A. This absolute beauty of a unique looking car was shown as a prototype at the 1964 Tokyo Motor Show. When people saw it, it was love at first sight. And the introduction of the Wankel rotary engine to the Mazda lineup really excited people. Especially at the time, it was the latest and greatest in internal combustion engine technology, and the hype was unreal. So in 65 and 66, Mazda built 80 pre-production models to undergo rigorous testing before they released it to the public. The L10A and L10B models were made in 67 through 72 and had the revolutionary 810 rotary engine. The L10A was made in 67 and 68 until it was upgraded to the 10B in July of 68. Now let's talk about this engine. Now, like I said, the engine in this is an 810 rotary. It's less than a liter, and it's a carbureted 2-rotor, and it pushes 110 horsepower, and it was paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. So, tell me, why did the Japanese fellas like this so much? Well, you may not have heard of Japan's road tax. See, when the Cosmo was released in 67, Japan's local tax act of 1950 was in effect. Basically, this meant that the bigger your car's engine, the more you paid in taxes. As someone who's not exactly fond of handing over my hard-earned money to the government, I probably would have been in love with this car back then too if I was Japanese. Only 982 cc's making 110 horsepower in the late 60s is beautiful and cost effective too. Only at 1.5 million yen, or around $4,100 US, which is less than the Toyota 2000 GT for similar performance and lower road taxes too. Adjusted for inflation, it would cost about $36,000 today, or 5 million yen. The L10B series had an upgraded 813 engine paired with a 5-speed manual transmission. Less than 6 of these cars ever made it to the United States, and as far as we know, there's only 2 of them left around here. One of them belonging to Jay Leno. The first version of the Cosmo was used by Mazda in a single race in 1968. They wanted to test the durability of this new rotary engine, so they took it to the Nürburgring for the 84-hour Marathon de la Roe. And it was a success, because both engines technically survived the race. One of them finished at around 4th place, while the other one had to end its display with only about 2 hours left of the 84 hours. The only reason they had to pull that car is because of axle damage. Otherwise, they would have placed similarly to the other one. The L10 Cosmo was a success. Though it had limited production at 1,176 cars, it sold well and had a great public image in Japan. So after a couple of gap years for a redesign, Mazda came back with the CD series in 75. Series 1 CD Cosmo ran up until 1979, and the Series 2 up until 81. This one was also known as the Cosmo AP for anti-pollution, or also the RX-5 in international markets. The gas mileage doesn't really scream anti-pollution, but sure. So essentially this thing ended up being the father of the RX-7, which would be made 3 years later. The car was available with the 12A and the more popular 13B 2-rotor engines, making around 110 to 123 horsepower. They also made this car with an inline-4 piston engine with 82 horsepower and called it a Mazda 121 or the Cosmo 1800, but we don't like that one. We don't like piston engines in this part of town. But this version was a huge hit in Japan, and it still featured a smaller displacement than most other cars, meaning save tax dollars. Although this one comes with a lower cost of ownership, they really considered this a luxury car, taking some influence from the Lincoln Continental. The CD Cosmo came in a Landau design, with a vinyl roof and a fastback design, with a very unique looking B-pillar. It would compete with the Toyota Crown and Nissan Gloria at the time. Sales outside of Japan, however, kind of flopped, so they decided to not sell the Series 2 as an export. Next came the HP Series Cosmo, running from 81 to 87, sharing a chassis with the Mazda Lucy, or the 929. The JDM only rotaries were badged as the Cosmo, while the traditional engine versions were badged as the Lucy. Any exported ones that went to Europe were called the 929, and none of those exports were rotaries. This one came in both coupe and sedan form, and it had a number of powertrain options from rotaries to inline-4s, and even an inline-4 diesel, making this the only car in history to be offered with a gas piston engine, a diesel engine, and a rotary engine. Depending on which one you chose, you would get from 69 to 162 horsepower. In fact, the 82 Cosmo with the 12A turbo motor was the fastest production car in Japan until it was overpowered by the R30 Skyline RS. Such a wonderful car to be sold alongside the RX-7. You could say it was the bigger luxury version of the RX-7, in fact. Speaking of the RX-7, the FD was offered with the 13B RE engine. A wonderful piece of technology that would also find its way into the next generation JC Cosmo. If you don't know rotary engines, the 13B is probably the most popular one out there, and it consists of two rotors. The name comes from the 1300 cubic centimeter size of the engine. But this car wouldn't have been so special if it didn't have a truly one-of-a-kind option. The 20B REW is one of the most precious human creations ever conceived, and this fucking beauty was in the Cosmo. Not only did they need to tack on another rotor for those gains, but they threw on the twin turbos for fun too. And what a fucking rocket ship the thing is when the boost kicks in. It's basically a supercar for the 90s. They advertised the total horsepower for the 20B to be 280 horsepower per the Japanese gentleman's agreement. But I will say I have a sneaking suspicion that the actual figures were a little bit higher. All these Cosmos came with a 4-speed automatic transmission, but some crazy fuckers out there have turned theirs into manuals. The wonders of the Cosmo don't end there. In fact, we have only just begun. Let's take a quick look at all the different trim levels you can get. So for the lowest, we had a Type S. It stands for Sport. It had a dark interior with cloth sport seats, and it also had fine-tuned springs and wider tires to give the driver a better hold of the road. A step up is the SX trim for sports extras, available for all model years. This one had all the amenities of the Type S, but with black leather trim and suede seats, a torque sensing LSD, further enhanced springs, and 16-inch BBS wheels. As the counterpart to the Type S, we have the Type E for elegant. This trim would have a tan, full leather interior including seats, secondary climate and audio controls on the steering wheel, and power mirrors that are heated on the later models. And finally, we have the Type E CCS, which is just the Type E with the addition of the touchscreen. Mind you, this is the only available with a 20B engine. It is the epitome of 90s luxury and basically a modern car, but from the 90s. I should add here, I made a mistake. The Type S also comes with the CCS option, along with 13B models. It's so beautiful and so ahead of its time, and that's why I love this thing. And you can tell if a Cosmo is equipped with this feature because there would be a little lump on the roof.
for satellite navigation.
So what is this CCS thing? Well, it's the car control system, obviously. It's the car's central user interface. This is where the driver can adjust the radio, climate, or GPS. Which does remind me, the Eunos Cosmo was the first production car to ever have navigation built in from the factory, and they put it on a touchscreen. Are you kidding me? This is in 1990, and I've had cars from 2013 with hardly anything besides a volume knob. You could have even watched satellite TV on the damn thing back in the day. What's that? All this luxury on top of power seats, power windows, power mirrors, and still not enough? Well, perhaps one of the fancier options will change your mind. For example, the full ground effects package. You can get an upgraded look and aero with this package. And to make sure your extra investment stands out at night too, there's a light on each side skirt revealing the Cosmo logo. Other options include an air purifier, soft extra fancy floor mat sets, a roof rack, mud flaps, car cover, among various other small options. Now, sadly, the aftermarket world on these cars is pretty small. I mean, back in the day, RE Amemiya made some parts for the car, but not many others followed suit. Not saying I blame them. I mean, there are only 8,875 of these sold, 3,550 of them being 20Bs. So needless to say, not many people have ever even heard of this car. So I make parts for it, especially when you're across the pond. But it does stand out, it does get attention, and it will summon white dads from the void to let you know that your steering wheel is on the wrong side. For what the car is, it doesn't get enough attention in my opinion. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's the RX-7 hoarding all the Rotary attention. I know for a fact that's at least partially true. Many 20B Cosmos were purchased and stripped just so that they could take the engine out and put it in the whatever the fuck they wanted. Quite a shame. Or maybe people just don't think it's within their budget. But to be honest, they're probably cheaper than you think if you know where to find them. But I have noticed a little something about cars with cultish followings, the Cosmo being one of them. The community is awesome. My experience has been great. I mean, they got helpful fellas. I mean, there are still guys making contributions. For example, the lights on the dashboard, they tend to fail fairly often, and apparently the guys who designed the electronics on this car were fucking nut jobs and made things really hard to fix. So there's a guy out there having people send him their dashboards to fix. Then there's another guy. This guy's an absolute legend. He took the entire service manual and wiring diagram and translated it over to English. So finally us Yanks can work on this car with a better idea of how to go about it without going in blind. Overall, not the most active, but definitely a very happy and healthy community, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Finally, in 1995, the Cosmo brapped its last brap and was no more. There was a glimmer of hope of seeing it again in 2002 when Mazda unveiled the concept, the Cosmo 21. It had a design made to commemorate the original Cosmo and was built on the original MX-5 Miata platform, but with an early version of the Renesas rotary engine. This was an evolved and improved version of the 13 basically, and is the same engine that was found in the RX-8 2 years later in 2004. That glimmer of hope was a little bit extra bright this time. Because you see, other manufacturers were doing this same thing, this modern retro style cars, and they were having great success with it. Examples include, say the Chevy Camaro, the 5th gen Camaro, or even the new Beetle. Sadly, with sales dwindling year after year, the Cosmo had to leave in 1995. Perhaps one day another will come along and bless the world with its rotary greatness. So I hope I was able to teach you something new today about the Eunos Cosmo, the awesomest driving machine to ever touch pavement. And I really do hope this information reaches a lot of people, not because not enough people know about this thing, but they should. It's an objectively fantastic car and not far from being the ultimate enthusiast car. I mean, with a couple of changes like tuning, some suspension work, some extra horsepower if you want it. It'll be great for the track or even for drifting. So people, if you're into cars and you're even the slightest bit curious about a rotary engine and you don't have a Cosmo, what in the hell are you doing? Go out there and get one because it's freaking awesome. I'll see you all later.